U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security Janet Napolitano was born in New York City in 1957 and was raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania and Albuquerque, New Mexico. A graduate from Santa Clara University, Napolitano later received her Juris Doctor from the University of Virginia School of Law. Prior to becoming the Secretary of Homeland Security, Napolitano was in her second term as governor of Arizona. She was the first woman to chair the National Governors Association and was named one of the top 5 governors in the country by Time magazine. In addition to becoming the first female Attorney General of Arizona, Napolitano served as U.S. Attorney for the District of Arizona. She joins us today to discuss her work with Homeland Security and the latest developments in immigration reform.
Blame the immigrant. We have learned from our past, and we are better than that today as a nation. But lessons afforded us by our own history must be a constant reminder and a guidepost for how we approach these and other difficult issues. Now, nearly 3 years ago, when President Obama came into office and nominated me for this position, he and I both knew that we were inheriting a broken immigration system with a patchwork of laws and outdated requirements that were in desperate need of updating. We know that amidst all of the rhetoric surrounding the issue of illegal immigration, it is often difficult to keep track of the facts. So let's start there with the facts. As the President and I each said in El Paso earlier this year, and as mayors, police chiefs, community leaders, and recently an array of publications as diverse as USA Today, the Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal have all reiterated, security along the U.S. border with Mexico is at an apex. And indeed, those who live and work along it continue to say it is safe and it is open for business. And as someone who grew up in New Mexico and who has spent most of my adult life in Arizona and who has walked the border, I have flown it, I have ridden it on horseback, I have worked with border communities from Brownsville to San Diego, I can say that the border security measures we have taken constitute the most innovative and effective approach our country has ever deployed. The priorities we have set do not mean that we will stop enforcing the immigration laws. We prioritized the removal of those who repeatedly violate our laws and immigration fugitives themselves. These are individuals who repeatedly return to our country after having previously been removed or who flagrantly ignore an immigration court's order to leave the country. The priorities I've stated are common sense. They enhance public safety, they help secure the border, and they promote the integrity of our immigration laws. It makes sense to prioritize our finite resources on removing a Mexican citizen who is wanted for murder in his home country ahead of a Mexican national who is the sole provider for his American citizen spouse. It makes sense to remove a Costa Rican man convicted of sexual assault against a minor before we spend the time and money to send a mother back to her violent and abusive husband in Jamaica, separating her from her American-born children. And finally, it makes sense to prioritize resources on the removal of a Chinese man convicted of aggravated assault and weapons offenses before removing a 10th grade student who was brought to this country as a child. And that's why I'm calling on advocates on all sides of this issue to work with us and the Congress on these issues rather than attacking the system or the people who work in it. In the meantime, it should not come as a surprise to anyone when we continue to outstrip historical trends on removals or the number of criminals and egregious immigration violators contained within that population. It should be similarly expected that DHS will be just as focused on how we exercise our discretion.
During your speech, you emphasized the importance of the United States citizens understanding that the border is safe and secure and efficient, and that there are some misconceptions about our nation's border security. What has contributed to this level of doubt and uncertainty? with U.S. citizens?
One thing I think is that a lot of people have never been to the border. So it's easy to kind of get this mythological impression in your mind about what it must be. And even though we have driven illegal immigration down to record levels, and we have increased our seizures of drugs and illegal cash, illegal guns, there will still be crimes that are along the border. I mean, it just as New York City has crime or Chicago has crime. You wouldn't say they're unsafe per se, but you recognize there's still crime there. So I think what happens is that anecdotes get substituted for really looking at what's going on along the border as a whole.
Now, there are some 10 million undocumented immigrants in the United States, and while each of them has a different story, what is the general makeup of each?
A lot of them came legally, and they have overstayed their visas. And so one of the things we're doing is going through that beginning to go through that population to prioritize in line with the priorities I've described: public safety, egregious immigration violators, fugitives from existing warrants, and then pinging those to ICE so that ICE goes out and finds them.
Now, in recent news, there has been a law in Atlanta, Georgia that has determined that state laws against illegal immigration will now be determined by the Supreme Court. How will that impact the future of state laws and the citizens that live in those states?
Well, here's what's going on is that states have perceived that Congress is not acting, and so their legislatures are passing laws, and they run the gamut. Some are states that provide in-state tuition, as was mentioned in the question. Most states, quite frankly, forbid it. There's lots of laws about who can get a driver's license and what happens if you're caught driving without a license, and those sorts of things. And all they are is evidence of states moving to fill a vacuum. To me, they help make the case of why Congress should act. The Supreme Court should not make the immigration law of our country. The Congress should. They are the duly elected representatives of the country, and we will work with them. We are experienced in this area. We know this area. We can share with them what makes us a large system work well, that upholds the rule of law, upholds also our immigrant tradition. But we need Congress now to show they have some serious interest in doing this. Secure Communities is going to be implemented nationwide by 2013. That it's basically an agreement between us and the FBI to share fingerprint information. And like I said, it is really a great tool to have to try to find those who are violating our criminal laws who've also violated our immigration laws. I mean, how else are we supposed to find them? We're supposed to walk down the street and say, hey, you look like you're here illegally, and by the way, have you violated any other law? I mean, that doesn't work. So where are they most likely to be? In jails and prisons. And Secure Communities is a tool that helps us find them.
To what degree has information technology impacted the way in which each individual is identified and their process is executed?
Well, I think technology certainly helps because you're dealing with lots of people and lots of numbers, and the ability to systematize that allows us to create cohesion between departments within the Department of Homeland Security, like Customs and Border Protection and ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, CBP and ICE, but also with the Department of Justice, with the immigration courts, and the like. Secure Communities is basically a technology more than anything else. It allows us, of the thousands and thousands of people who are arrested every day across this country, to identify those who also are in the country illegally. And if we find intentional intentional attempts to violate the law, what we're going to do, or what we have done, is get the U.S. Attorney to bring criminal cases, which they have done. We have imposed record amounts of fines, which they have paid. For those who do federal contracting, they have been debarred, meaning they've been forbidden from seeking federal contracts. And all of those categories are at record highs.